Wine to Five is partially funded by Albarello Luxury Hand Soap, an unscented must-have accessory for anyone who loves wine, cooking, and food. For more information, visit albarellosoap.com.
It's not 5 o'clock, and they don't care. Welcome to Wine to Five. Entertainment, education, and everyday drinking for everyday people. Your hosts are Valerie Caruso and Stephanie Davis, two wine educators who don't need a clock to know when to pour that next glass.
Welcome back to another episode of Wine to Five, and welcome back, Steph. It's so great to be in the same time zone again.
Yes, and it's great to have a standard 750 ml show today. I mean, I think I'm like, that is so fun that this is a standard show. It's not a Magnum. I mean, it's the standard show, and it feels good.
It does feel good. It's just good to have you back.
Well, thank you. And I do want to apologize if anybody hears the leaf blower in the background. It has something to do with lots of leaves.
Well, it is still fall, and we're having a beautiful fall.
Oh, I know. It's so crazy. I heard that it was really one of the most spectacular falls that some of my friends have ever seen in 40 years, and I missed most of it in Italy, but I'm so glad that I'm catching it on the tail end.
Yes, be glad it's a leaf blower, not a snow blower.
That's true. I am happy. I'm very grateful for it. But let's get this party started, Val.
Woo!
What's in your glass today?
Oh, well, speaking of blowing, it's election day.
That's good. Oh, my God.
I'm sorry,
that's awesome.
It just came out. It's the whiskey, so that's what I'm drinking. So by the time you all hear this, it will probably have rained frogs, locusts will have swarmed the heartland, or something like that. Maybe you're listening from your bunker. I don't know, maybe not. Or life in the good old USA is going on as it always does. Either way, I stocked up on liquor this week. And because we don't have enough booze in the house already, Steph, I mean, gosh, our bar has grown since you were here last, but I got me a new bottle of whiskey.
Nice. I love me some whiskey.
I know. This one's been on my bucket list for a while. This is a whiskey with an E because it comes from Ireland, and this is the Yellow Spot. Darn it. And it is insane. I believe it's John's new favorite. I think they had me at Malaga casks in addition to the sherry and ex-bourbon casks they use for maturing the whiskey.
Yeah, seriously. I've heard about this. I mean, I tried Yellow Spot before, and I loved it. And it's actually been mentioned in that Drinking Adventurously book that you had suggested, and how our whole hashtag W25 challenge started. I mean, it's an incredible whiskey.
And it was right next to the one I went looking for, the Red Breast Lustau edition in the Somme, not the Somme Journal or the tasting panel. They had a whole thing on whiskeys on the Pernod Ricard portfolio, whatever. And so I folded that page over. I said, I'm buying these two bottles this month. Well, I found this one, and it is a single pot still whiskey. And the funny thing about this one is it was only re-released a few years ago, like I want to say 2012, and it disappeared in the 60s. And
right.
There was a red spot and a blue spot, and they disappeared too. The green spot is still around, and you can still get that one. This one is a 12-year-old whiskey, which means it has to spend a minimum of 12 years in the wood. Have some more whiskey, Val. And what's really cool about this one, they only release about 500 cases a year, supposedly.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, so if that's changed, I'm not aware of it, but there is a beautiful spice in this thing, and I think I told you earlier, it reminded me of like French vanilla bean ice cream. It's got like a buttercream element. The finish, to say smooth is understated, but it is very, very long, very elegant, yet still complex. It's got this like stone fruit. I would say like French vanilla buttercream icing with like marmalade of apricot and maybe some thyme, and it's just got so much going on in it. It is just beautiful, and as you can see, the bottle was bought yesterday and we're about a third of the way through it already.
I love it. It makes a great gift item too, for like a really nice gift for somebody, because it's not inexpensive. The green spot is less expensive than the yellow spot, but for your friends or family who really love Jameson, this is, mind-blowing. I mean, this is a cool alternative for your, average Irish whiskey lover. You can give them the yellow spot as a gift and knock their socks off. Totally.
And I would say for somebody who really can't get into the peatiness of an Islay Scotch or the power that comes with a lot of Scotch and even some bourbon out there. Bourbon can be like, hey, hey.
Yeah, it'll have a lot of bite to it and there's people who like when you were saying smooth, people relate to the word smooth. So, Irish whiskey is known to be a little bit softer.
Yeah, it's just absolutely gorgeous. And so I highly recommend if you can get your hands on a bottle of this. It is just, and it's for this fall weather. It's just an absolute cozy bomb.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, totally.
What do you have in that pretty pumpkin glass up there?
Well, this is the glass. It's probably been on the show before, but this is my new Belgium Brewing fall glass that's all orange and yellow tones and stuff with leaves on it. But I do not have any beer in this glass. I have Chartreuse, soda water, and a slice of lemon, and I just love Chartreuse. I love anything French most of the time anyway. And it's the perfect aperitif because my husband's aunt and uncle are coming over shortly, and we will be having wine and pizza, and this is a good thing to start with, I think, because I didn't have any yellow spot, and it's just so crazy to me that you're drinking yellow spot because my husband, so Justin's uncle, is a huge Scotch drinker. And so I brought up the big tray we have of different whiskeys, and most of them are bourbon because that's what Justin likes. So I'm bringing it up and I'm looking to see, okay, do we have a Scotch that Uncle Mike will like? And I actually thought, I wish I had some Irish whiskey to drink on the show today. And of course, the first thing that came to mind was Yellow Spot because it is, I think, one of the best Irish whiskeys. And my friend Rob introduced me to Yellow Spot a few years ago because he really knows what he's talking about. He loves all whiskey, and he even did an apprenticeship at a distillery in Tasmania. So he knows more about whiskey than most people I know. And so when he said that I would like Yellow Spot, I knew it was going to be good. And so I'm not surprised that you and John totally are loving on that. But yeah, I thought it was so funny when I was like, Yellow Spot? Oh, I wish I could be in the same room with you, drinking the Yellow Spot, doing our standard 750 ml show.
This bottle would not survive two of us. Oh my gosh. Well, maybe our listeners might want to know a little bit more about Chartreuse.
So Chartreuse is one of those mysterious, drinks that the monks created hundreds of years ago, and you will never know the recipe of what's in it. But it's basically an herbal digestif that, like all digestifs, it has its place as an aperitif as well. But it's kind of herbal, has more freshness than bitterness. Yeah, I think it's really great in a citrusy kind of drink. So you can mix it with other spirits, and it's not cheap, but it is so good. And you don't need a lot because the flavor is pretty profound. The herbal notes in it.
I think that's fascinating. I love weird stuff like that.
Me too.
Since we're not talking about booze today, and we're quite a bit in, I thought it would be really cool if we talked about some of the things that Steph saw and tasted while she was in Italy.
That's right.
Yeah, Steph, talk to us a little bit about what you think our listeners would like to hear about today.
Well, so I think I told the listeners that I was in Umbria for a while, but I did go over to Tuscany. So I spent some time visiting Brunello producers and thought it would be fun to share a little bit about this special wine with everyone. Some people may not know the difference between the two big B words in Italian wine. For example, Brunello and Barolo. Right? Everybody's heard of those two and probably even mix them up sometimes. I know I've heard that mistake, and it's okay if you do, but we're here to straighten you out. Barolo is made with 100% Nebbiolo grapes and comes from the region of Piemonte. in northwestern Italy. We will be talking about Brunello today, which comes from a delimited growing area in Tuscany. Now, it's made with 100% Brunello, and Brunello is a clone of the Sangiovese. It's a nearly brown color, this clone of Sangiovese, as the harvest time approaches, and so that's why it was given the name Brunello, Italian for like brown, basically. Okay, so that's a good way to remember that. And Brunello is a wine style and also the name of the grape. It is produced in the Montalcino growing area, and oh god, I just loved being there. It was... You know, and I do love these wines. So I think I was just having a little flashback. Sorry about that, everybody.
That's okay.
But Montalcino is a growing area which lies about 70 miles south of Florence. And here the Brunello vines are treated to a uniquely beneficial microclimate in which nearby Monte Amiata creates its own weather pattern. So the dry summer heat of this area is offset by precipitation, cool evening breezes, thanks to the Monte Amiata. This allows the Brunello to fully ripen, which they would have less ability to do in a less amiable, cooler northern environment. So between well-draining soils and warmer climate, the powerful Brunello ripens quickly and is one of the first to be harvested of all the Sangiovese clones, which is a very cool factoid. And I actually got to spend some time at a few different wineries, like I said, and I actually got to talk with Lorella at Banfi about the Horizon vinification system that they created, which allows them to combine temperature-controlled tank fermentation with additional organoleptic characteristics imparted by barrel fermentation, like all in one. So I think this shows a beautiful integration of technology and tradition in the name of quality when it comes to producing one of Italy's greatest wines. I mean, it is one of the big B's, right? Brunello.
It really is. It's one of those wines you can keep in your cellar for a special occasion, and it ages very, very well. Again, we go back to the vintage and everything. Why it's important to have that kind of control, because that's a lot of investment. A lot of real estate investment, and when you're aging a wine for as long as you do Brunello. But the history of Brunello is also interesting. And while I was studying in Italy, in Florence, we got to go to Montalcino and taste some Brunelli. But yeah, I got to do a little research on Brunello and find a little bit about the history, which I thought was quite significant. So it turns out that I love history. I think history makes just wine so much more interesting. Early wines from Montalcino were known as Vermiglio, Vermiglio. But they were blends of red and white grapes, which would never be done today.
But was done all over the place in Italy.
It was done. I mean, that goes back to, remember, Chianti's history and everything else. Yeah. And we can actually find documentation on it as far back as the 15th century. But it was in 1685, the more famous wine for these regions were actually the Moscadello.
Which is Moscato.
It's yes.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Wines made from the Moscato grape. But they were actually mentioned in Francesco Redi's dithyrambic work, Bacco in Toscana, which is called Bacchus in Tuscany. Later, in the 1800s, the famous Ferruccio Biondisanti proliferated the single varietal experiment of his uncle Clemente, which was to produce a pure 100% Sangiovese wine. And so what they did is they worked with early Sangiovese clones in order to try to achieve a single varietal wine that would be able to last 100 years in bottle. They wanted to produce this 100-year wine. So when we say this wine can age for a while, that's not messing around. It can. And in fact, if you go to their cellars, you can see bottles that go back to the 1800s. It's really fascinating. I know. They won't open them for you, but they are there.
They will tease you with them.
They will tease you with them, yes. Ferruccio Son Tancredi, he carried on the tradition of trying to achieve his father's and grandfather's dream of long-lived wines and the tradition of pursuing a wine capable of long-term aging. And he was actually one of the contributors to the development of that the appellation standards for the Brunello di Montalcino. which is really kind of cool. So after World War II, during which time wines worldwide were not prolific, as you can imagine, resources were going into war efforts, but there were still only a handful of Brunello producers. However, throughout the 50s, these wines were little known outside expert circles. Only a few thousand bottles of Brunello a year made their way into the hands and glasses of wine lovers.
No, and at that time when it really wasn't well known, it was interesting to hear Lorella talk to me about how Banffy really changed a lot of that. But even at the other producer I went to, who was just like a super small producer, like a boutique winery, they really said that, nobody knew about Brunello. It wasn't until the 80s.
Absolutely, you're right. During the 60s, Italy had its wine quality revolution, which we've talked about on the show before, and this is when the first, appellation standards were formalized and produced in the mid to late 60s. And there was also an economic expansion in Italy, and this is what encouraged more investments into Tuscan wine production. I mean, this is where the Super Tuscans and Bulgari started getting developed, and this is what enabled a lot of vineyard replantings, as well as the development of vinification techniques and facilities. I talk really good on whiskey, but the innovations in stainless temperature-controlled tanks, which we talked about earlier, and expanded use of smaller wood barrique actually had become the standard in the 60s. However, it was also in the 60s that Brunello Di Montalcino earned its DOC appellation status in 1966. Good year. Woo woo! Woo woo! I'm doing my little rock and roll
You're
sign
doing
here.
your vote for wine.
My vote for vino.
Vote for
t-shirt.
vino t-shirt.
My little
over
hands
there.
up. I'll take a picture of that.
Cute.
And Brunello, so 1966, it became a DOC. And then subsequently, the consortium of Brunello Di Montalcino was created in 67. And then, like you said, by the 80s, that's when the wines from Montalcino became popular. And that's when Brunello Di Montalcino earned its DOCG status, which it has today. So there are rules that go into making this wine, and that whole Brunello Gate, that happened back, a handful of years ago was a result of not being able to follow these standards. But I'm going to let you talk, Steph, about the rules of production. What does it take to make a good Brunello?
Yeah, and why does it cost what it costs? And why is it so concentrated and powerful, right? So a good Brunello, and we're talking about Brunello Di Montalcino with the DOCG status. That is 100% Brunello. That is the Sangiovese Grosso clone. It is required to have a minimum time in wood of 2 years. It can have more, but that's the minimum. Minimal aging time in bottle, 4 months, 6 months, so 2 additional months for the Reserva. Bottling must take place in the production area, and the minimum alcohol has to be 12.5%. This is also interesting. It's only available for sale 5 years after the harvest. 6 years for the Reserva. And you drink Rosso di Montalcino while you're waiting on your Brunello, right?
Yes, while you're waiting for your Brunello to age for those 5 years, you drink the Rosso, which is just as good.
Oh, yeah, and we drank a lot of it, and we brought some back to our apartment, and I don't think I brought any home with me. I think I did actually consume them all, but I love Rosso di Montalcino, and one of the reasons why you would, and I do, is because it also is 100% Brunello. The bottling must take place in the production area, and the minimum alcohol is 12%. It is available for sale, though, the 1st of September of the year following the harvest. So it's still elegant, it's great with food, but you can, drink it at a younger age and not be so fussy about it and not spend so much money on it. So that's all good stuff.
It is, and it's funny because a lot of people think it's just a lower grade wine and all that. And I want to say, did you see the movie Letters to Juliet?
No.
There was a wine in that movie, and I want to say it was Carpazzo.
Letters to Juliet. Is it something I should watch, yeah?
It is now that you've been hanging out in Italy for a while.
Dustin's such a movie buff. I need to have more movies in my queue, especially the ones that have to do with food, wine, and travel.
When I came back from Italy after that first year, and I was still in that melancholy place that I told you about, that really sad zombie
Postpartum depression.
Yeah, postpartum. I took myself to the movies. The first thing I went and saw was Letters to Juliet, and I sat there and cried the whole time because I'm like, oh, there's Italy, oh! And they were drinking this Caparzo Brunello in the movie.
And you're like, this isn't making it any easier.
I know. And they were drinking this in the movie. And so then I went out and bought, the Rosso was on what they called the Wall of Shame at my local wine shop at the time. And so I bought up all the bottles and just started drinking it. And then, there was a price difference of about, $30 or $40 a bottle almost.
Seriously.
Yeah, but that's what they were drinking in Letters to Juliet. It was Montalcino wine. I'm pretty sure it was the Brunello, the green label. It might have been the Rosso, the red label. But just a little trivia for you about
and
the Montalcino.
And a little wine and movie pairing.
Yes, and then I sat there and I had a ticket to the second Sex and the City movie, which I watched after that. So that was my feel-good day at the theater after returning from Italy and trying to get myself out of my melancholy zombie funk from having to come back and tackle very large American bread and American money and things. And it's, yeah.
No doubt. No
American
doubt.
coffee. Anyway, so what else can we get in Montalcino? It's not all about the red wines, is it?
No, actually. I think you mentioned something before. What was that, Val?
It was the Moscadello di Montalcino. And this is a wine made from white grapes. And it can be still, it can be sparkling, it can be the late harvest dessert style. But by definition, on the Consorzio homepage, it is meant to be a dessert wine. So it is woven just as tightly into the history of Montalcino, just as the Brunello itself, and as documented by the poet Redi. He says, quasi divino e leggiardetto, Mosco del Letto di Montalcino. And that means those divine and light Mosca del Letto di Montalcino. So they were divine and light. So
I don't think it's too easy to find out here, though, is it?
No.
No. Just so that our listeners know
Just
that.
so you know, if you're in Montalcino country running around, or if you go to a Montalcino wine dinner or something and somebody pours this for you, that's pretty cool. It has to be 100% Moscato Bianco grape, the Moscato grape. And the bottling, of course, has to take place there. And then, of course, different alcohol by volume requirements. If it's the still or the frizzante, the minimum is 10%, 10.5% actually. And then if it's the late harvest type where the grapes are going to be, a little bit dry or concentrated sugars, of course, you can have higher alcohol of 11.5 minimum, which is still pretty low.
Right.
And so you can have, again, still frizzante, which is lightly bubbly, and they're meant to be drunk young, so don't try to age these wines. The late harvest, the sweet dessert wines, they can age for some time and are available for sale after the 1st of January, after the second year after harvest. So those ones you can hang on to a little bit but the still and the sparkling you want to go ahead and drink. The other thing I found interesting in Montalcino was Sant'Antimo, and these you will see. And you can find these are other wines from the production area that are other than the Brunello, other than the Rosso. They all have their own standards, other than the Moscadello. This was created in 1996, and the Sant'Antimo covers the red and white productions, including a Novello, and also the Vinsanto, which has to be from white grapes, and then the Sant'Antimo Occhio di Pernice from red grapes. And the varietals will depend on the grapes used for the wine, but the reds and whites can be made with international varieties. They can have the Cabernet, Merlot for the reds, the Chardonnay, Sauvignon for the whites, etc. But what I mentioned earlier was Novello, and you're probably asking yourself, what is that? Well, by the time you hear this, it will be, about the 10th of November. Mm-hmm. And it will be still some time before the Beaujolais Nouveau is released. Well, the 6th of November every year is when Vino Novello is released in Italy. And guess what? That beats the Beaujolais Nouveau release. So everybody thinks Beaujolais Nouveau is the first wine to be released of the harvest, when it's not. In Italy, the 6th of November every year is Vino Novello. The Veneto has it, Tuscany has it, Sant'Antimo and Brunello has. All these regions have different Novelli that they release every year. You grab a bottle of that, you get some of those roasted chestnuts.
Yes, we had some of those.
God,
and they had the fire pits going, and
yes.
It's just smoky, and it smells good, and then you get the paper bag of the chestnuts, and you reach in, and it's all hot, and yummy. And
Oh.
but your hands get a little black from all of the skins coming off. But it's good.
okay. You wipe them on your pants. You're good to go.
Just wipe them
but
on
those
your
wines,
jeans. That's what jeans are for.
That's what jeans are for. And those wines, you only drink them till about 2 February the following year, and then they kind of got to take them off the shelves because then they're no good anymore. So
They're
not
their
meant for using.
luster.
They really, really do. So if you can find yourself a bottle of Novello, I don't think a lot of it is exported, but if you're over there, I know a lot of our friends, it's funny, are over in Italy right now or just were. So if you're listening on a train or something, get yourself a bottle of Novello because it was released 2 days ago as we're recording this podcast.
Yeah, or send us some, because I
no
have
kidding,
some.
right? Bring it back in your suitcase.
There you go.
Let's move on to the factoid. We're yammering away here over these delicious, and I'm getting hungry.
Yeah, well, something came up in my travels in Italy that I thought would be a fun factoid. So, what is the difference between Italian grappa and its cousin, the French mar? Okay, and it's spelled M-A-R-C, so it looks like Mark, but it's actually pronounced Mar. It rhymes with car. So first let me tell you what they have in common. They're both distilled brandy from the byproduct of winemaking called grape pomace, which is like the grape skins, the stems, and the seeds. But their differences are that grappa is traditionally clear and unaged. However, there are now 4 categories of grappa: young, cask-conditioned, aromatic, and aromatized. I think I've only had really the clear. But Mark is aged in barrel. That's what makes it different. And because it's aged in barrel, it's a little smoother, softer, and richer. I thought that was really kind of neat because I knew they were pretty much almost exactly the same. So I imagine that a cask-conditioned grappa, in a lot of ways, is very much like Mar. But one other cool thing that I learned was that you can evaluate grappa by rubbing a small amount on the back of your hand and sniffing for impurities.
Yep.
Because those impurities are released in that vapor once it's warmed up on your skin. And if the aroma is pleasant, then it's a well-made grappa.
Absolutely. And either way, you dance on the table regardless. I do have to take something back here. Even though normally the Marcs are not barrel aged, the Marc de Champagne is not.
Oh, is it?
Not normally. Not
Okay.
normally. Usually it's clear, the Marc de Champagne. So, and when we talk about that with our guests, our next guest on our next episode wants to talk about champagne.
Yeah.
Well, they make spirits up there, and it's an eau de vie from the Champagne Marche, so those grapes, and normally not barrel aged, usually clear. Again,
I'm sure there are exceptions, you know.
it depends on the producer. I would love to get my hand on some barrel aged grappa. I think that would be awesome because I've only had the clear stuff and then danced on a table.
Right. And I imagine that in blind tastings, you may not know the difference, you know, which one's a grappa and which one's a Mar. So, but it's still kind of cool because, you know, then you can geek out and explain the next time your friends say, "Do you want to have a shot of grappa?"
Si, per favore.
What's on the wino radar this week, Val?
So my wino radar this week has to do with the new Wine Enthusiast podcast. I know in our last episode, Susan mentioned it briefly. Our guest, the Wine Enthusiast executive editor. Well, their podcast launched in the last week, and we were so excited. I was subscribed before it even launched. Like, they released an episode 0,
right?
Which we never did, and we really should have, and we've recorded it, and yeah, we might just go ahead and release it anyway, just in case new people can find us. But what's really surprising is where some of our country's finest wine writers have found their love for wine. And, like many of us, it started with the wine cooler.
I know. I just love how this was their topic for their first episode.
I mean, I think that set them up to have a podcast that regular people want to listen to.
Oh, absolutely.
You know, they've already got a brand that we all know and love. We've talked about plenty on this show. We use their products. And I think a lot of us love content that we can absorb through our headphones and not have to read.
And relate, and be able to relate to.
Well, yeah, and I would say they did such a great job of bringing personality in there, and they had, like I said, our guest from last week, Susan Kostrava, but their digital editor is Jameson Fink. And I don't know if any of you knew this, but he had a podcast called Wine Without Worry.
Oh, I didn't know that.
And it was hilarious. I mean, he got to use the F word quite a bit, which I was a little bit jealous of. That hasn't been an episode released that I couldn't find since February, so I think maybe he's doing his stuff with Wine Enthusiast now. But I love me some Jameson Fink. So if you go back and find his... we love talking about OPP on this show.
That's right.
Other people's podcasts. I don't care, because we're all in the same business. We all support each other. It's fine. And I would go back and check out Wine Without Worry. He does one episode where he's going through some red wines with a woman who didn't think she liked red wines, and they were going through some Beaujolais, and I think that's some Valpolicella and whatever, just teaching people that, hey, wine doesn't come in two flavors, red and white. Yeah. Well, that's kind of the groove of the Wine Enthusiast podcast. We all want to have a wine country lifestyle, but it's not exclusive to the rich and the snobby of the world. It's for everybody. And guess what? They talk about why the wine coolers disappeared.
I know, and I don't want to spoil it for anybody. I want everybody to listen to the show.
Exactly. I'm not going to tell you why they went the way of the dinosaur. We'll just let you, and it wasn't an asteroid, I will tell you that. But we'll let you guys listen to that. But they also talk about some of the revival of those kind of things. So They tell us all this in their first, they really teed up a really cool podcast, and they're doing really well on iTunes already. They were kind enough to share our podcast on their Facebook page.
Yeah, that was really nice. Thank you.
Which I'm like, oh my gosh, Kara, their new PR person is just awesome. So we want to give her a shout out, who helped us, kind of get our word out a little bit, and, just really helped us promote that episode with Susan Kostrava. And of course, we are more than happy to give them a shout out for their new podcast. Congratulations on your launch. I know our listeners are going to be like jumping to subscribe and check out what Wine Mag has to offer.
Definitely.
Yeah, so shout-outs.
Yeah, let's do it.
God, and when I edit this, just to hear my own voice saying all this again is going to make me bat crack crazy. But we're ending soon, I promise. But I want to give a shout-out to Michael. He was my sushi chef over at Sushi Sushi last week. He's very curious about learning about wine. And he actually handed his phone over so I could navigate subscribing him to our podcast on his Android. And I gotta say, the iPhone's a heck of a lot friendlier.
It sure is.
Oh my gosh, with our native podcast app, I'm like zip, subscribe, whatever. I'm a subscribing fool. But on that phone, I'm like, I guess you gotta be used to it, but I figured it out.
Yeah?
So if I ever come across you in public and say, hey, are you subscribed to the iTunes, to the Wine to Five podcast, and just hand me your phone because I know how to do it now. But if you do have an Android, I know a lot of people have had this problem, go to Google Play Music and then bing, bang, boom, there it is. Type in Wine to Five.
Yeah, that's cool because we love you Android users too, but we just don't use Android, so we don't know.
Oh my gosh, yeah. So I'm like kind of clumsy with it, but I figured it out. And also, I said, oh, by the way, I also signed you up for the Society Wine Educator's Nifty Wine app as well. So,
cool.
So he's got those on his phone. I said, here, you can just do these quizzes and compete with your friends. And so shout out to Michael, for, just sitting there and making my sushi visit comfortable and fun, because my sushi date turned out was in the hospital with her child getting tested for strep. And I'm sitting there, I'm like, oh, I guess I'll sit at the counter. And so I hope you're feeling better, Chris. And
that's a great sushi place.
Oh my God, isn't it?
Yeah.
Oh, so what are your shout outs this week?
Well, I want to thank Lorella, the PR and communication manager from Banffy. Thank you for spending nearly 3 hours with Justin and I at Castello Banffy in Montalcino. And you have so much enthusiasm to share with the wine world. I mean, I can see your smile now, and it was a joy to be with you. Thank you so much for the interview and everything. And I also want to give an applause for Laura Gray, the estate manager at Il Palazzone. And what's fun is that Laura and I made a connection 6 years ago, and it wasn't over her Brunello. Oh. Actually, it was the olive oil that their small estate produces. In addition to their 2 red wines, they do a Brunello and a Rosso. And we bonded over the olive oil that I bought my neighbor Herb as a 75th birthday present. So because I enjoyed my time with Laura so much, I have a little clip to share with everybody. Laura has a funny, you know how much we love funny and embarrassing wine stories. Well, she's got one for you. So enjoy this clip.
Hello, Stephanie. It was very nice of you to have come by last week to visit me at Montalcino at Il Palazzone, and even nicer to be asked to make this recording. You you asked for funny tales. I mean, obviously, I receive quite a lot of people in our tasting room, and there are often many embarrassing moments. I think that really in my list of highly compromising anecdotes, the best one is when I was working actually at another estate. And this was before the euro, so it was a time in which other Europeans were incredibly wealthy in Italy with the lira. So, a German postman could buy boxes and boxes of Brunello. Those were the days. Anyway, this guy came with his wife, and he was filling up, making his order, magnums and cases and magnums, and I could see the sort of classic cross-wife face where the combination of the space and the expense was beginning to get to her. So she said to him, look, what about me? What about the kids? We're not going to all fit in the car. And he said, honey, you're getting the train. And that was, I think, the worst moment I've ever witnessed in a tasting room.
That was really cool. I love that story. You're taking the train.
Isn't that funny? She had so many funny stories that she was telling.
Awesome. We do need to remind listeners, you have 90 seconds.
Yes.
You have 90 seconds to tell your story or ask your burning wine question. So it seems like not a long time. It is quite a while. I mean, she was able to get a cool story out in 90 seconds.
Sure.
But we'll get cut off after 90 seconds because we can't afford the paid version of SpeakPipe. So it's free. It's 90 seconds. Go.
And if we wanted to have the paid version, we could have our Patreon support us. So let's move on to our Patreon love.
Our show would not be possible without you, our listener community. To find out more about how you can support Wine to Five Show, please go to patreon.com, Wine to Five Podcast.
Because we want to thank you guys, really. I mean, all of the cool things that Valerie and I can do for this show is now being supported by our Patreon, so we're going to have even more cool stuff the more Patreons we get. So thank you so much. We're going to send some love to our tenacious tasters. You are just as dedicated to our Wine 25 podcast as you are to your adult beverage, wine or otherwise. We appreciate your tenacity. I'm not drinking whiskey, but you would think I am. So thank you to Jeff E. from the We Like Drinking show. And to our It's Not 5 o'clock and We Don't Care listeners, you guys... You want your podcast when you want it, and you want your wine when you want it. Nobody's going to tell you when it's time to pull that cork. Thank you, you guys. We love you, Meg, Clay, and John. And to learn more about becoming a Wine-tastic listener supporter for only $1 a month, you can check out our Patreon-only content, and that is at patreon.com/wine25podcast. Seriously, it's so easy. I mean, even for $1 a month. Check out what's on our Patreon page and see what you are missing as far as the content on there. And we want to thank you for being a vital part of our listening and sipping community, because we've got those really cool Govino glasses, you guys. It's like Wine 25 swag on fire. It's so cool. These Govino look. And I'm going to get mine as soon as I come down and see Val. Like, I'm so excited. So if you become a Patreon supporter at the different levels, so you will see that the $5 a month, you get one glass, and at $10 a month, you get a set of 2 glasses. And at $20 a month, you get a set of 4 glasses, which is cool for entertaining. And those glasses will be mailed out after the credit cards are charged on the first of the month. And you can change your pledge level if you want to go higher or lower at any time after the first of the month.
Yeah, you can do like $20, get the set of 4, and then go down to $1 a month.
Yeah, you can do whatever you want. We just want your support, and we really appreciate it. So we hope that if you do support us and on Patreon and you get the Govino glasses, that you'll post some pictures for your hashtag W25 challenge using your new Wine25 logoed glasses. By the way, Current and new patrons at all levels will be entered into a contest. So we're having a new contest that ends on January 1st. The prize should be in our little hands by next week. But either way, you win because you're helping our show, right? That's
You know what? We should get them like stickers
Yes.
that says, I bought Val and Steph a glass of wine, and it's not 5 o'clock and I don't care.
That's right. Yeah, no, think of it that way. Seriously. It's like $5 a month. You just like bought us, a glass of wine. Totally.
I know. Yeah.
And, okay, one more thing before I'm done with this. There's going to be a recipe on our Patreon page that pairs with this week's episode. And that's just for our supporters on Patreon.
Yeah. And that's a fun recipe, too. So if you can get yourself some wild boar, you're going to love this recipe because it pairs with Brunello.
I love it, too. It looks delicious.
Oh, my God. I know. It's like I want to make that. I'm going to get my hands on some wild boar. But I think you can.
Yeah, actually, I wouldn't doubt that one of our local butcher shops would have it.
Oh, yeah. We're all about sharing the love, and we would love that you share the Wine to Five love with your friends and online community. And we certainly appreciate all of your involvement, all of your feedback. We love when you leave us a burning wine question on SpeakPipe. Remember, 90 seconds. And iTunes love. Oh my gosh. iTunes love is also appreciated in the form of a glowing iTunes review as well for your listening pleasure. Whether iOS or Android, we are also on iHeartRadio. So share our fun Wine to Five community with all the wine lovers in your life. And did you know we got a latest iTunes review?
Yes, I saw that. That was so exciting.
It's in the blog.
Yes.
Yeah, it's from Side Hustle Wino on iTunes. And we are proudly sporting our latest review because somehow she got a wine glass in there. I don't know how she did that. There's a wine glass, like a little red wine glass.
Emoji kind of thing?
Yeah. And I'm like so not, I don't know. But it says, best podcast on the subject of wine by Side Hustle Wino. These ladies use the word edutainment to describe their podcast, and it is the perfect descriptor. The show is always full of great information and always entertaining. I highly recommend this podcast. Cheers. And then the little wine emoji. I don't know how you did that.
That is so cute. Maybe she was doing it from her phone. I wonder if you can just plug that in.
Oh, maybe you can. And she's also got a cute little blog out today on election wines, too. So I went right for the hard stuff. In fact, the first polls are starting to close, and so I'm going to need to refill my glass.
Drink more.
Drink more, but you can also come play with us on the Facebook page, on Twitter, on Pinterest, on YouTube, Google Plus Spaces if you'd like. Also, if you want to build your collection of wine books, I've got this really cool whiskey book behind me, or Vino Italiano if you want to read more about wine. I'll go ahead and link those up. They are available on Kindle as well, a lot of these books. And you can check out our online store, also located on our website. You can connect with Steph on Twitter at Albarello Soap and on the Albarello Soap Facebook page. You can check out her videos on Albarello YouTube channel. Steph is also on Instagram as the Wine Heroine. And you can find me, Val, on Twitter. I sing when I'm drinking.
You're on a roll. It sounds good.
Connect with Val on Twitter at Wine Gal Unboxed and on the Vino with Val Facebook page and on Instagram as Vino with Val. Can I stop talking now? Please, Val.
Yes,
please stop talking
now. Get to the
now.
whiskey.
Yes.
Have a sip of whiskey.
It's gone.
I'm going to tell everybody one more thing. Don't forget that we still have the hashtag W25 challenge going on. So when you're trying new wines and drinks and whiskeys or what have you, the challenge gives you an opportunity to co-host the show with us. So, and stay tuned, right? Because we have an upcoming episode with our latest winner from the hashtag W25 challenge. So, until next week, cheers!
Thank you for listening to the Wine to Five podcast. Be sure to check us out at Facebook/Wine TWO5 and tune in next week for more fun and useful sip tips.